Hello, we're going to be installing virtual machine using VMware Player. You'll notice I already have VMware Player up and running. Once you launch it, because it's Player, it's the free version, you're going to have some issues. One of the first issues is you're going to get the software update window. For here, we're not going to deal with it. We're just going to click on Remind Me Later. You might have a few additional pop-ups. Just exit out of all of them. What we want, since we don't currently have a virtual machine installed, we want to choose Create a New Virtual Machine. If we have a physical disk, we'd choose the first option, Install Disk. Just happens to be that I don't currently have a disk, I only have a virtual disk. For most of the CIT courses or technical courses you're going to have an ISO. You're not going to have a physical disk. So you're going to choose the second option. You're going to click on Browse, find where your virtual disk is at. Just happens to be that mine is in my downloads folder. So I'm just going to double click on it. Notice down here, Windows 7 detected. It should detect whatever ISO that you have. If you have server, it should detect it as server. If it's Windows XP, it should detect it as Windows XP. You just want to verify that it does detect it. If it doesn't detect it, there's something wrong, and you should ask your instructor. From here, go and click on Next. Notice here, we have a product key area. We're not going to enter a product key. That will result in us getting a warning message. That's okay. Version of Windows to install. Because I'm installing Windows 7, there's multiple editions. I can select which edition. Just happens that my disk is only Windows Ultimate, or Windows 7 or Enterprise, sorry. So that's all I can choose. If I had an multi-version disk, I could choose whatever version. That is just Enterprise, that's all I get. Enter your name, enter a password if you would like to. Notice it is optional. From here, hit Next. Here's the warning message. You did not enter a Windows product key. That's fine. Basically, how you read this is, do you want to continue? Yes or no? I do, so yes. This is a critical portion right here. Name of your virtual machine. If you're going to have more than one virtual machine open, you want to make sure you name them appropriately. That way you don't have two Windows 7s or 3 servers that are open. You do not know which virtual machine you're working on. So naming them is super important. This example, I'm just going to call it Windows 7A. Just that way I know this is my first machine. Next part is save location. This is extremely important. If you're doing this in any of the schools, they wipe the desktop so that if you did this, it wouldn't save anywhere. So we have to point it to either our protected hard drive or our USB hard drive just to make sure it's going to be saved. So if we hit this, I'm going to click on Browse. For me, I don't have a USB hard drive. I'm just going to go ahead and install it on my C drive. But most people want to verify where they're going to be installing it and saving it to with their instructor. I'm going to make a new folder. Name it intuitively. That way, when you look at it, you know what it is. I'm going to be calling mine Windows 7A VM. That way I know it's my Windows 7 virtual machine. I'm going to click OK. I verify that's the place I want to install it, and that is. I'm going to click on Next. Notice the default size is 60 gigs. That's fine. Here you have to store the virtual disk, the virtual hard drive, as a single file versus a multi-file. Essentially, do you want one large file or several small files? For performance, I choose one large file. It makes things easier to manage. I'm going to click on Next. I'm going to review to make sure this is all correct. Make sure the name and the location are there. Most of the time, you're going to have to customize the hardware just to make sure it's how you'd like it. So I'm going to go and click on Customize Hardware. One of the first big important steps is looking at your network adapter. Is it set to NAT or bridged? For most of the classes, it has to be set to bridged. I'm going to go ahead and select bridged. If it is NAT, you might have some issues in the class, so change it to bridge. If you don't do it at this step, that's okay. We'll revisit later to show you how to do it again. For here, just click close, verify everything else is right, click finish, and it should go ahead and set it up. Notice you had a few pop-ups. This will determine all of your removable drives. Happens to be that I have a webcam, I also have a backup, and I have my hard drive plugged in. Yes, that's fine. Sometimes it also detects USB mice and keyboard. That's all good. Click OK. Because I'm using Player, there's upgrades. I'm going to ignore this. Just remind me later. Notice in the back, it's starting to set up. And now we just kind of wait for the virtual machine to do itself. It will go through its whole startup process. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here so you don't have to just wait. Notice it only takes a few minutes to install, but we're completing the installation now. And it should be finishing up here in 1 second. Hopefully. Okay, definitely cut out this section of the video so it's not just dead silent time. Right after it's done setting up, it will actually go ahead and restart itself. It will act just like a regular computer, essentially. The issue, though, with the virtual machine is it's going to have its own start menu, its own taskbar. It will act as its own fully fledged machine. And so you need to take that into account. I have a start bar down here, and my virtual machine will also have its start bar. So you have to pay a little bit more attention to which start bar you're clicking on. Notice it's preparing my desktop because it's the first time that I'm logging in. You might get this failed to install VMware tools. That's pretty common for VMware Player. That's okay. Don't worry about it unless your instructor tells you you have to have it. The first time you set up your virtual machine, you'll get this warning. You'll select whatever network location or profile that you'd like. For most of our classes, we're going to choose the work network. Notice when I clicked in it, VMware actually took control of my mouse because you have 2 mice. That's important to note. Here I'm going to select work network, and it will finish setting up everything. Notice the little computer down here. It's not giving me a little yellow exclamation mark, so I should have internet access. One last thing with the virtual machines before I conclude this video is for most of my classes I require at least a second hard drive. So for this, I'm going to go to VMware Player, top left hand corner. I'm going to go to Manage. I'm going to click on Virtual Machine Settings. If you didn't set the NAT controller, the network adapter before from NAT to bridge, you can do that now. If you want to add or change hardware, you do that from this screen. I actually want to add a second hard drive, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Add. You might get a pop-up. Do you want to continue? Yes. Choose what hardware you want to add. For me, I want to add a hard drive. So I select hard drive, click Next. I want to create a new virtual disk. Yes. Because the virtual machine is on, we can't choose IDE, only SCSI. That's fine. Go ahead and choose Next. Again, 60 gigs is the default. Allocate disk space now. Essentially, do you want to use all of that 60 gigs now or not? Most of the time for the classes, ignore it. Do not allocate now. Make sure that box is left unchecked. I want to store it as a single file like we did with the primary disk, so yes, use that option. Click Next. What do you want to call your secondary hard drive? I'm going to call it 0, that's fine. I'm going to click on Finish. I'm going to click on OK. I click back into my virtual machine so that my mouse is here. I'm going to go to Start. I'm going to click on Computer. Notice the second hard drive is not there. We haven't turned it on essentially. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and right click on Computer. We're going to click on Manage. We're going to go to Disk Management. Might take a second or two, that's okay. Once it's done connecting, okay, it's going to take its sweet time. Once it's done connecting to the disk management, you'll actually get you can't use this hard drive until you initialize it. You must initialize the disk before you can access it. Disk 1 is our new hard drive that we just added. Then what type of boot record do we want to add? For most of the classes, you're going to be choosing an MBR. You're not sure which one to choose, ask your instructor. For this, MBR is fine. We're going to click on OK. Notice we have our one disk, which is our C drive, and we have our secondary disk, disk 1. It's online, but showing black. It's unallocated. We're going to go ahead and click on it, left click, right click on it, new simple volume. We're going to get our wizard to come through. Do you want to continue? Essentially, yes, hit next. We're going to allocate the space. You can carve it up however you like, but for this example, we're going to use all of the space. So we're going to say yes, and then next. We can assign a certain letter if we would like, or we can a different one. Or we can tell it don't assign a letter or a path. For us, we want to have it assign whatever letter it chooses, that's totally fine. Click on next. We do want to format it. If you want to label it, we can label it. Most of the time, I tell people just leave the defaults, at least for most of your classes. If your instructor wants something specific, they'll let you know. From here, click on Next, and then click on Finish. Notice it should be formatting, and it should go by pretty quickly. Once you're done, once that's gone through that menu, go ahead and exit out of it. You'll notice that once you're done formatting, it shows as a new volume. You should be able to see it. For the bare bone basic version, that will work. I have to click on the wrong thing, so I'm going to start back this video. We have 2 hard drives, and that should be sufficient for the first just setting up your virtual machine. We're going to turn it off safely. We're not just going to exit out up here. We're going to close down whatever programs we have open, and we're going to treat it just like a regular physical machine. Go to Start, go to Shutdown, let the virtual machine shut down itself. Give it time. Once it's done shutting down, this window will close.